Well. 2021 is starting off with a bang. A bang. And I'm not talking about the energy drinks. I'm talking about Bitcoin at the $31,000 area this morning, making a move. And as you can see on the chart here, look at this breakout. We had this, talked about this the other day, this potential breakout above $20,000. And look at it now, up there to 31,300 so far. The high, I think, today was 31,500. So we drew this ascending triangle, or whatever you want to call that. We drew that triangle a while back. This was back on the 16th of December. And you can see now the price of Bitcoin, 31,500. We're going to talk about this move, talk about Bitcoin in general, and talk about the possibility of a 50% drop from here. I know. Bitcoin should only go to the moon, right? Well, sometimes it does pull back. So we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to talk more about this move and all the stuff going on with Bitcoin right now. Let's go. What's going on, guys? Welcome to 2021, where the price of Bitcoin is $31,500. Who would have thought? If you would have told me back at the beginning of 2020 that the price of Bitcoin would be $31,319 on the second day of 2021, well, I might have believed you, but it is pretty insane to say the least. And as you can see here, the chart going just straight to the moon. This is the daily, these are daily candles. And I know these candles look like they're a little like, penny stock, 1 minute candles, but these are actually daily candles. And you can see today going from 29,000, this candle opening at the lows at the $29,000 area and rallying up there to $31,284 currently. So what's the deal? You can see back there, beginning of November, December, with the price of Bitcoin, the beginning of November was $14,000. If you go even further back here, you'll see back there in 2020, the March, the price of Bitcoin was $5,000. Now, how much higher can this thing go? And I've got a little bit of a equation here to how high Bitcoin could go from here, and when we should expect a pullback, and what kind of pullback we should expect. So now, if you go back and you look at the history of Bitcoin, you go way back here, and you look at just some of the overall price movements of Bitcoin, and you see some of these drastic moves that we've had. If you've ever stayed up late at night watching the price of Bitcoin, trading Bitcoin up and down when some volatility happens in the middle of the night, if you're like me, definitely hit that like button, because you're going to want to stay updated on what the price of Bitcoin and what is going on in the Bitcoin cryptocurrency space. If you look at it like this, okay, let's find the last time that the Bitcoin had a high. We'll call this the expansion, right? We'll call this the expansion. Where did Bitcoin go? Back in 2012, it went from 40. Back in 2012, Bitcoin went from the $13 area up there to 265. From on this expansion, we're going to call these expansions, price discovery expansion, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're going to call it. So this was a 2,000% move. And then we'll say from this, we'll just look at like the lows to the highs, and even this maybe wouldn't even been right because you could do it back here. But in general, let's just keep it going here. So if you go from here, that would be a 60% drop there. So we'll say 60% negative. We'll say a 70% negative move on this one down. And then we're going to go on this one, we'll go, I guess, to the low here. Negative 80%, obviously. So we'll say negative 80% drop there. So we've got a pattern here. We've got these big moves up, and then we're getting, 70, 80% move there. Now, let's see how this one plays out as well. So this would be back in 2015, and that top being that $1,100 area to the upside on that expansion. So then we're going to draw from this high, negative 80 on that one. So what do we got? This has happened 3 times now. This is not witchcraft, guys. 2012, we had this big move, the expansion, we're calling it. We had the 70 to 80% pullback, another expansion from that high, another 80% pullback. We've got this big expansion there, and then we got another 80% drop. So we've had this happen 3 times now over the last, we'll say, 10 years. This has happened 3 times. So now if you look, so you can see this move here to the downside, down to that $3,000 area again. I'm not really going to count this move because I think we had the pandemic and we had just a lot of things going on in the world that the Bitcoin just, really can't look at it. I'm not going to say this is natural. That's not natural price action, I guess is the best way to put it. This is not natural price action, but it is interesting how obviously we held, that support area there off of those lows. These were the lows in 2019, and then that being the low there in 2020. Again, the big thing that I've talked about before with Bitcoin is obviously when we're looking at this, we're looking at these higher lows, these constant higher lows. How low can we go, or how high, or what I mean? So we've got the low. So we had the lows there at the $10 area. We had a low there at 60. We had a low there at 200. And then the next low really was there at the $3,000 area after that big expansion and the pullback. Same idea here. So on this move here, obviously, I'm not going to say we're going to go up 1,800%. That just seems a little drastic, really, from that high. But if we look, from that high there being 1,000, we went up to 20,000. So there's still obviously lots of room to run here and go higher. There's obviously going to be a lot of factors going against Bitcoin just in terms of the overall price action here. But the key really is to focus on the higher lows, and seeing these patterns and how they're working out. So if I was to say that we're going to get an 80% pullback, and I would really think that our next low here, our next higher low on Bitcoin, by looking back at the chart, seeing how those previous kind of highs would be our lows. This one really didn't work out perfect there, but you can see how the lows have kind of went from 60 to 200, now to 3,000. So the lows are obviously getting higher and getting greater and greater as we go. So our next low, I'm going to say, this might, bite me in the butt, but I'm going to say our next low is going to be right around this area here at the $8,000, $10,000 area. So basically applying this methodology, this idea here, of that next pullback being an 80% drop, it's pretty simple, or I don't know if I say simple, but we can say, looking at this now, if we look at it basically at this going up to the $40,000 to $50,000 area, kind of like up here. I don't know if you guys can even see that, but there's a line. I drew a line up there at the $40,000, $50,000 area, and if we get that pullback, we'll say from $49,000 back down there to the $80,000. If we get that pullback from the $50,000 area back down there to $10,000, so if Bitcoin continues to rally and squeezes up there to the $50,000 area, that next 80% drop from that high would put us right around $10,000, being 80% from there. So again, it's like, okay, there's that 80% drop, and it's pretty clear to see kind of the pattern that we're in right now. We got these big expansions, and then these 80% pullbacks. Big expansion, FOMO, and then the pullback. Big expansion, and then the pullback. Is that to say it's going to pull back tomorrow, it's going to pull back today, it's going to pull back next week? No, it definitely does not mean that by any means. But if history continues to repeat itself, and we know that the reason that Bitcoin really, at the end of the day, why it's moving is a lot of that FOMO. A lot of people just buy. When it was red, when it was down here at the $3,000 area, nobody was talking about it. But now when it's at $32,000, everyone is talking about it. And what it's going to do is it's going to just create more and more hype. The news is going to be talking about it. CNBC is going to be talking about it. Robinhood, all these people are going to be looking at it, trading it, and it's going to create massive FOMO. And it's going to easily, squeeze this up there to the $50,000, $40,000 area before getting that 80% pullback. But like I said, there's always, it could pull back a little bit here, it could pull back a little bit, kind of do something weird. But right now, just not a lot of consolidation here. And one thing I like to look at is, okay, so the last time that Bitcoin, you can see here, the last time that Bitcoin made that push to the highs, it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks of basically green before finally getting that sell-off and starting to lose momentum. If you look at the move that we're in right now, we'll just say basically above that previous high there at the $20,000 area for that expansion to begin. We're going to only be, 1, 2, 3. So we're at 3 weeks now, and we've still got more upside to go here, I believe. And that's why I'm putting us at the $50,000, $40,000 area first. But there's going to be a lot of volatility. There might be some $2,000, $3,000 drops in a day. There might be some ups. There might be some downs. We could get some consolidation here for a little bit. There's a million things that could happen. And the focus here is not to be like, hey, this is for sure going to happen, or this is, I know it's going to happen. It's guaranteed. That's not what this is about. But really what I'm looking at here is the previous price action. The previous price action. How long did it take to get to those highs? How much did the drop happen afterwards? We've seen continuously these 80% drops after getting these massive pushes higher. That $40,000, $50,000 area makes a lot of sense to get that next pullback to the $10,000 area. So basically, like I said, we're just looking at these lower lows here right now. Bitcoin definitely getting overextended. If you draw a trend line there on the weekly chart, if you draw a trend line, guess where that puts us at for, that pullback being that 10,000 to 12,000. If it really just continues to go higher, we should still see that pullback at some point. We might get some nice little dips, some volatility along the way, but the trend don't lie. The trend don't lie. You can really just, it's a pretty solid trend line there on the weekly chart. And maybe, kind of like that kind of like that really, if you don't want to consider this being the price action there. But we still, I think there's really a good opportunity to get a pullback here. I know at the end of the day, I can draw lines on charts and talk about numbers and all that stuff. But one thing has stayed consistent with Bitcoin over the last basically 10 years here is that Bitcoin, it obviously likes to get really overextended. And then that 80% drop likes to come in there, get back down to the moving averages. I think right now we got this moving average there at the 7,000. If that keeps moving up, this is the weekly chart with the 200 EMA, the 200 EMA there on the charts. So right now the EMA is at the $8,000 area. If we get a little bit of a pullback, it'll kind of flatten off there. And still, I'm thinking that $10,000 is very possible here. Even though people don't believe it, people are going to say, oh, it's not going to happen. And that's not to say that if Bitcoin does pull back there to the $10,000 area, that it's going to be a huge wash. But again, I know there's a lot of other factors that are playing into this as well, because these past moves, we haven't had the institutional big money investors that we have now. So a lot of people are saying that there will never be another drop like this again. But I like to play into the idea that these kind of historic patterns continue to happen. The same idea that people say that the market, the stock market is never going to drop again. There's always a possibility when that opportunity comes. And the way I look at it too is the more and more people are bullish, the more and more people believe that Bitcoin is going to go higher, the better the chance that it goes lower at some point, because it's just the way that the market works. So once everybody hates it, once everyone thinks that Bitcoin is going to crash and go to zero, that's when I want to be buying. And when everyone thinks that Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million, that's maybe an opportunity to look for a pullback. And like I said, I think just by looking back at the chart here, Bitcoin still has room to run. But after that, it'll be a question of, do we get this 80% pullback, or are the big investors, the big institutional investors buying every little time they get? I like to kind of see the different possibilities. Like I said, there's, a chance that Bitcoin just keeps going higher and higher forever, maybe. But there's also a chance of looking back at history here and seeing like, hey, this has happened before. Bitcoin has made these big moves. Think about back in 2017. Everybody was super bullish. Everyone thought Bitcoin was going to go to $100,000 back in 2017. And they were buying at that $20,000 area. It crashed down there to $3,000. And now here we are at the $31,000 area. So in general, if you really wanted to play this, look at my trend line. You could say $15,000, $16,000 being that next kind of pullback area. But I still think that this 80% trend of dropping 80% is going to play out and kind of return to us. Or it'll happen. It'll happen at some point. We're going to get that move. Like I said, who knows if it's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to happen today. It's going to happen a week, a year. Who really knows exactly when it's going to happen? But I'm always kind of looking at it like, there's a possibility here. There's a very good possibility that this does make a drastic pullback at some point. And I think at that point, if we get a pullback to the $10,000 area, it'll be just game time. Party, drink Bacardi. So if you guys haven't already, do me one big favor. Hit that like button, subscribe button, all the buttons down below. There it is. my prediction for Bitcoin. Can it keep going higher? Possibly. But let's look at the history. Let's look at the chart. I think that $50,000 area is a very realistic target, and then a 80% pullback from there. We'll see what happens. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. I will talk to you guys later on.